My family wants me to give my sister the necklace that symbolized my marriage, but I refused. Now they're guilt-tripping me to keep the piece. I, 32F, lost my wife, Lily, 30F, 2 years ago in a drunk driving accident. Losing her shattered my world, and I've been trying to pick up the pieces ever since. My family, though, has never really understood what I've been going through. To be honest, they never fully accepted my marriage to Lily in the first place. When we got married, my grandma gave me a necklace that's been passed down in our family for generations. It's a tradition that the women in the family get it when they marry. And it meant the world to me because it felt like one of the few times my marriage to Lily was actually recognized as real. Since Lily passed, my sister Emma, 28F, who's always been the golden child, has been eyeing the necklace. She's getting married soon and recently mentioned how, now that I'm not really married anymore, I should pass it on to her. That was hard to hear, but what really broke me happened last week at a family dinner. We were talking about her wedding, and she made a joke about setting me up with one of her fiancé Luke's 35 friends. I felt uncomfortable but tried to brush it off. Then she said, "At least Lily won't be there to haunt you if you hook up with someone." I couldn't believe she said that. I didn't even know how to react. I just sat there. Later, when I told her how hurtful it was, she rolled her eyes and told me I was being too sensitive, that I needed to stop being so depressing and lighten up. Then she brought up one of her bridesmaids, Sarah, who had a crush on me even when Lily was alive, and suggested I have some fun with her at the wedding, as if my wife hadn't mattered. I told her there was no way I could come to the wedding if that's how she feels about Lily and my grief. Things escalated from there. Emma accused me of being dramatic and said I was ruining her big day over one little joke. My parents took her side, saying I should just let it go and show up to support my sister. They even mentioned again how I should give Emma the family necklace, saying that since I'm not using it anymore, it should go to her now. Since then, I've been bombarded with calls from my parents, Emma, and even Luke. They've all told me I'm selfish, that I need to move on and stop holding on to the past. Luke even said I should be grateful my family didn't disown me when I came out, as if I owe them something for barely tolerating me. Now, I'm questioning everything. Am I being unreasonable for not wanting to go to her wedding after all this? Part of me wonders if I should just suck it up and go, but another part of me can't believe how little my family seems to care about Lily, or me for that matter. Sorry if this is a bit rambling. I've had a few drinks and I'm still trying to process everything. There's more to this, but I'm running out of space. Eta for refusing to go to the wedding and keeping the family necklace, or should I just give in to keep the peace? Update 1. First off, thank you to everyone who reached out and gave me advice on my original post. I didn't expect so many people to care about my situation, and it really helped me feel less alone in all of this. After reading through the responses, I took a few days to really think about everything. I've been going back and forth in my head about whether I should go to Emma's wedding or not. My instinct was to stay away, but then my parents called me again. This time, it wasn't just the usual guilt-tripping about supporting my sister or moving on. My mom, in particular, got emotional, saying that if I didn't come to the wedding, it would tear the family apart. She even brought up how my dad's health has been declining lately and how this added stress wasn't helping. That hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything, I don't want to be the reason for any more tension in the family, especially with my dad's health on the line. So, I decided to meet with Emma one-on-one. I figured maybe, just maybe, we could have a real conversation, without the wedding pressure or family opinions hanging over us. We met at a coffee shop, and honestly, I went in with low expectations. Emma looked surprised to see me at first, but we sat down, and I told her I wasn't there to fight. I just wanted to talk. I started by explaining again how much Lily meant to me and how her death affected me. I thought maybe if I opened up a little more, she'd understand. But Emma, being Emma, kind of brushed it off. She said she gets it, but that it's time to move on. I could feel my frustration rising, but I stayed calm. I told her the jokes she made were hurtful and that I wasn't sure I could be at her wedding knowing how little she seems to care about my feelings. That's when Emma dropped a bomb on me. She admitted that she didn't fully understand why I was so attached to the family necklace, She said, I always thought you weren't that traditional, so why does it even matter to you? I was stunned. I explained again that the necklace was a symbol of the one time our family acknowledged my marriage to Lily. Emma didn't seem to get it. She just shrugged and said, Well, if it means that much to you, keep it, but don't hold it over my head. At that point, I felt like we were getting nowhere. I told her I couldn't make any promises about the wedding yet, but I'd think about it. As for the necklace, I made it clear it wasn't up for debate. After that conversation, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I was relieved she said I could keep the necklace, but on the other hand, her lack of empathy still stung. I was hoping for some sort of breakthrough, but it didn't happen. Later that night, Luke called me. I thought it was going to be another round of, "You're ruining the wedding." But instead, he surprised me. He said he understood why I was upset, and he even apologized for pressuring me to move on. He admitted he didn't realize how deep my grief went, and that maybe they'd been too harsh. That actually gave me a little hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could improve. But then came the twist I wasn't expecting. The next day, I got a text from my mom. She asked me to come over for dinner. Just me, not Emma, not Luke. I thought it was going to be a chance to clear the air, but when I got there, it was different. My parents sat me down and started talking about the necklace again. My mom said, You know, after thinking about it more, I still think it should go to Emma. I was floored. After all that, they were back to this? I asked why they were pushing so hard, and my mom hesitated before saying, It's not just about tradition. Emma's been struggling more than you realize. She's going through some things, and this necklace could really help her feel more connected to the family. Can't you just do this for her? I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt bad for Emma, but another part of me felt like they were just using her struggles as another way to guilt me into giving up something that means the world to me. I left that dinner more confused than ever. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do about the wedding, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not giving up the necklace. Update 2. So a lot has happened since my last update. After my parents pushed me yet again to give the necklace to Emma, I decided I needed to take a step back from all of them. I spent the next few days ignoring their calls and texts, which only made them escalate their efforts. At one point, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced, practically begging me to reconsider. She didn't outright say it, but I could tell there was something more going on with Emma than they were letting on. Then, the real bombshell dropped. Out of nowhere, I got a message from an old friend of Lily's, someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. She'd been at the same bar as Emma a few nights before, and apparently Emma was drunk and loudly talking about me, and not in a good way. According to this friend, Emma was telling people that I was clinging to the necklace and holding it hostage just to make her wedding difficult. She even went so far as to say, Lily's gone, and now she's ruining my wedding from the grave. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt this mixture of rage and heartbreak all at once. My sister had already disrespected my wife's memory to my face, but now she was spreading that nastiness around to other people. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it at the wedding. I couldn't deal with her and Luke's friends or the whole family weighing in again. So I waited until the day after, when I knew she'd be hungover and tired. I called her out directly. I didn't even beat around the bush. I told her I knew what she'd been saying and that it was disgusting. I reminded her that Lily was gone, but she wasn't some ghost haunting her wedding. She was my wife, someone I loved, and she deserved respect. Emma's reaction was not what I expected. She broke down crying, but not in the guilty, remorseful way I thought she might. Instead, she started ranting about how everything was always about me and my grief, and how I'd sucked all the air out of the family ever since Lily died. She admitted that she'd been holding on to a lot of resentment, not just about the necklace, but about how I'd become the center of attention in the family because of my loss. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I could understand that my grief had changed things, but on the other hand, this was my wife we were talking about. I hadn't asked for all this attention, and I certainly wasn't trying to make everything about me. I was just trying to survive after losing the person I loved most in the world. In the end, Emma and I agreed to take a break from each other. I didn't go to the wedding, and I have no regrets about that decision. My parents, though, are still giving me the cold shoulder, and I've heard through the grapevine that they're telling people I'm the one tearing the family apart. Update 3. It's been a few months now, and I think I'm finally starting to come to terms with everything that's happened. After I confronted Emma and decided not to attend the wedding, things with my family got even more strained. My parents stopped reaching out as much, and when they did, it was usually just passive-aggressive comments about how families should stick together. It became clear that they were still blaming me for the rift. But then something unexpected happened. I got a call from Luke, Emma's now husband. At first, I thought it was just going to be another guilt trip, but instead, Luke seemed different. He told me that after the wedding, things with Emma had been tough. Apparently, she'd been struggling with more than just wedding stress. He admitted that she'd been dealing with some mental health issues for a while, but had refused to talk about them. The wedding had been a distraction, something she could control. And when I didn't give her the necklace, it was like everything came crashing down. Luke said that Emma had finally agreed to get help, and that part of her breakdown had to do with unresolved feelings about our family dynamic. She'd always felt like the golden child, but also like she had to live up to that expectation. Meanwhile, I was the black sheep, and when I lost Lily, the attention shifted to me in a way she didn't know how to handle. It wasn't fair to me, and it wasn't fair to her, but it explained a lot about why she'd been acting the way she had. Hearing all this didn't erase the hurt Emma caused me, but it did give me some perspective. I realized that we'd both been struggling in our own ways, and neither of us had been able to communicate that properly. For now, I've decided to stay low contact with my family. I'm focusing on my own healing. So after my conversation with Luke, things shifted a bit in how I viewed the entire situation. While I was still hurt by Emma and my family, I couldn't deny the complexity of the emotions at play. The more I reflected, the more I realized how deep these unresolved feelings went. Not just for me, but for everyone involved. In the weeks that followed, I stayed low contact with them, trying to focus on my healing. I threw myself into work, started therapy again, and even reconnected with some old friends I'd lost touch with after Lily passed. For the first time in what felt like ages, I was beginning to feel a sliver of peace. I wasn't fully healed, but I wasn't drowning in my grief either. Then, out of the blue, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not a phone call, a literal handwritten letter. When I saw the return address, my stomach dropped. It was from my grandma. Now, my grandma has always been a bit of a wild card in the family. She's the one who gave me the family necklace in the first place, and despite her sometimes old-fashioned views, she was always supportive of my relationship with Lily. But she's also fiercely traditional when it comes to family and loyalty, so I had no idea what to expect. I opened the letter, and it wasn't what I thought it would be. Instead of reprimanding me or taking Emma's side, she wrote about how much she missed Lily, how much she regretted not being more involved in our lives when she was still alive, and how proud she was that I'd stood up for myself. She said she'd heard through the family grapevine about the necklace situation and wanted to set the record straight. Apparently, my grandma had been the one who originally suggested that Emma get the necklace, not because she thought I didn't deserve it, but because Emma had come to her in tears, talking about how she felt like an outsider in the family. She was overwhelmed by the wedding, struggling with her mental health, and feeling like she wasn't living up to the golden child expectations. My grandma, not fully understanding the depth of the situation, thought that passing the necklace to Emma might bring her some comfort. She didn't realize how much it would hurt me. The letter ended with her saying, "I realize now that it was wrong of me to push for that. I gave you the necklace because you deserved it, and it's yours to keep. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." That letter hit me hard. I had been so caught up in the hurt and betrayal that I hadn't considered how deep Emma's struggles went. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it added another layer to the story. It also made me realize something important. This whole mess wasn't just about the necklace. It was about years of unspoken resentment, misunderstandings, and misplaced expectations. Armed with this new perspective, I decided to reach out to Emma. I didn't want to jump straight into forgiveness, but I felt like we needed to have a real conversation, one without our family's constant interference. So I sent her a text. Nothing too dramatic, just, "Can we talk when you're ready?" A few days passed and I didn't hear anything. I started to think maybe she wasn't ready, or maybe she didn't want to reconcile at all. But then, one evening, she called. Her voice was quiet, softer than usual. She asked if we could meet, just the two of us, at a coffee shop. No parents, no Luke, just us. When I saw her, I didn't know what to expect. Part of me was bracing for another confrontation, but to my surprise, Emma looked vulnerable. She wasn't her usual composed self. She sat down, and before I could even say anything, she started talking. She apologized. Not in the half-hearted, "I'm sorry you feel that way" kind of apology, but a real one. She admitted that she had been lashing out at me because she didn't know how to deal with her own issues. She said that after Lily died, she felt like she had lost a part of me too. Emma explained that while she had always been the golden child, she had also been trapped by that label. She felt immense pressure to live up to expectations, and when I became the center of attention after Lily's death, she didn't know how to cope. It wasn't fair to me, and she knew that. But at the time, she was too consumed by her own feelings of inadequacy to see it clearly. I didn't know what to say at first. I hadn't expected this level of honesty from her, and it caught me off guard. But then, I realized something. Emma and I had been playing different roles in the family for so long, her as the perfect one, me as the outsider, that neither of us had ever really seen each other. I told her that while I appreciated the apology, it didn't erase the hurt. What she said about Lily, the jokes, the necklace, it all cut deeply. But I also told her I was willing to try and rebuild, if she was too. We sat there for a long time, talking about things we had never talked about before. I told her about how much I still missed Lily, how the grief sometimes felt like a weight I'd never be able to lift. Emma opened up about her mental health, how she'd been struggling with anxiety and depression for years, but had hidden it behind the image of perfection. She admitted she'd been jealous, not just of the attention I got after Lily's death, but of the deep, genuine love I had with her. Emma had never experienced that kind of love, and it made her feel like she was lacking something. By the end of the conversation, things weren't magically fixed, but there was a sense of understanding between us that hadn't been there before. I told her I needed time to heal, time to process everything. She said she understood, and we agreed to take things slow, one step at a time. As for the necklace, it's still with me, and it will stay with me. Emma hasn't brought it up since our conversation, and I think she's finally come to terms with the fact that it wasn't about the necklace at all. It was about the unspoken pain we'd both been carrying for years. Since then, I've been focusing on myself, continuing therapy, and working through the layers of grief and family dynamics that I've been avoiding for too long. My relationship with my parents is still strained, but I'm hopeful that, in time, things will improve. And as for Emma, I think we're on the path to something better. Not perfect, but better. In the end, I've learned that grief isn't something you move on from. It becomes a part of you, and you learn to live with it. And sometimes, the people you expect to understand the least end up surprising you the most. So, that's where things stand. It's not a fairy tale ending, but it's real. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm finally on the right path. Thank you to everyone who's been with me through this journey. Your support has meant more than you'll ever know.